Hi, everyone, and welcome to another campaign teardown brought to you by Rocketium. My name is Karan Rao, and I'm the Senior VP of Business here at Rocketium. Just to give you all some context, Rocketium is a marketing automation platform, and essentially we work with marketing teams, design teams of either enterprises or high growth consumer tech companies, and we help them automate creatives that are needed for their various campaigns and also analyze them so that they can continuously optimize campaign performance. So let's jump right into it. If you think of growth marketers, essentially they think in terms of strategy, right? What terms, what types of objectives I will have for a certain campaign, for those objectives, who will be the audiences, and also where are these audiences hanging out, and essentially I'm choosing my channels, right? But more often than not, the execution of this strategy manifests through various experiments, right? So for example, you might run visuals for different formats, be it images, videos, GIFs, HTMLs. You might use different types of images like PNGs, lifestyle imagery, etc. Colors, this is an important experiment lever as well. Anything to do with typography, so fonts, the copy that you're using, the size of the font, and then finally layouts, right? The different how all of these elements are arranged in a particular creative, right? And these are all the various types of levers or experiment levers that you could use across your visuals, but not all experiments are created equal, right? So based on many banners and videos that we've analyzed on Rocketium, we've been able to figure out that there are certain elements that are more correlated to performance relative to the effort that you put in executing them versus the others, right? So for example, you could say that colors and imagery has quite a bit of impact on the performance as opposed to the effort, because changing the images, changing the colors may not be very time intensive. Formats, if you're doing videos, GIFs, they are definitely high effort, but also videos are gaining a lot of importance, a lot of performance improvements for the campaigns. At the same time, changing typography may be low impact, but doesn't have a lot of, or rather it's low effort, but doesn't have a lot of impact that it might result into, right? So using this framework, we thought we would analyze how Instacart's ad campaigns are running. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the first pillar of our experiment lever, which is imagery, right? So let's imagine that they're running different types of campaigns. These could be installs, conversion related campaigns for parents, professionals, and across different channels, right? So what did we find out as it relates to imagery? One, they use a lot of recipes instead of ingredients. In fact, we spoke to their head of growth as well, and one of the insights that they got was, rather than using ingredients, if they used the end output, that was actually converting better, right? Using emotional connect, so using people in the creatives or in the imagery was able to drive would potentially drive better performance. And then they also have different sort of creatives where they are promoting their partner brands, right? These could be other stores, these could be the products that they sell. So a lot of times when they're focusing on these partner products, these product images are in primary focus, right? So let's move. So if you can get a sense that on the imagery side, there is a high level of experimentation that happens. As opposed to that, if you think of formats, yes, they're doing different sizes. They're also doing video, but didn't see a lot of different experiments they are running as opposed to formats. Their creatives are in 10 odd sizes, but a majority of them are actually, if you look at all their different creatives, majority will fall into 3 buckets, right? So not a lot of experimentation on the formats. The next we come to is color. So they're using color very effectively to use different background colors in their creatives. When a creative is for a partner brand, they are actually aligning the brand guidelines to the guidelines of the partner brand. And finally, in CTAs, we noticed that they were using a lot of different color variations, right? So again, a very high experimentation. They do a lot of experimentation on the color lever, right? Okay, let's move to typography. So as we analyzed a lot of the creatives, their messaging was primarily around the tone of the messaging was primarily around freedom and convenience, and quick delivery. They did very minor experiments on CTA. So typically, if you see all their creators, either their CTA will be shop now or add to cart, but not a lot of variation there. And then as it relates to also catering to their partner delivery partners, so that they can onboard more delivery partners, they're using a lot of testimonials in the copy, right? So again, feels like a lot of copy related learnings have been passed through, and not a lot of experimentation is happening on the typography front, right? Finally, layout. So we saw mainly two kinds of banners, one where you had headlines, product image, and a CTA, versus the others where there was a lifestyle, there was more lifestyle imagery, which kind of merged into the different parts of the creative, right? So again, on the layout side, comparatively much lower than the other levers, right? So if we come back to the experiment framework and we kind of layer it with Instacart's information, so you'll see that on color and imagery, where they're able to move fast, able to make changes quickly, they're experimenting at a very high rate. Probably layouts has been figured out by them, which means that they don't have to experiment a lot there. And again, formats and typography, they are experimenting, but not to the extent that they're doing for imagery and color, right? So let's just figure out how you could run such experiments very quickly, right? So I'll walk you through how you could do this in Rocketium. So let's jump into the product. So we've taken an example where we've taken a master creative from Instacart. So if you see, this is a master creative that has been set up in all the different sizes that they need for their different channels. Now, let's say I wanted to I'm a marketer, I'm a designer. Let's say I wanted to make some change here. Instead of shop now, I wanted to do add to cart. So you see that making one change, all these 5 banners have been updated, right? Now, let's say I wanted to make another variation of this, where potentially I wanted to try with a different image. So I could come here, replace this imagery, probably use, let's say, this one. And you'll see that across all these creatives, the imagery has been updated, right? So while we were talking, probably we ended up making 10 creatives in a couple of seconds. Now imagine that you actually have a spreadsheet, right? And in this spreadsheet, you're trying to test out offers, CTAs, even languages for that matter, right? If you're a global organization, you're catering to different geographies, you could actually go ahead and set all this up in a spreadsheet. You could also share URLs of images that you could use in the spreadsheet itself. You could come here, download this as a CSV file, come into Rocketium. You could map the columns to the columns of the spreadsheet to the elements in the template and go ahead and import. So now if you see across each of these different sizes, we've been able to update multiple creatives, multiple CTAs. So if you see here is where the CTAs are changing. So while we were talking, probably 75 to 80 banners got generated, right? So again, very quick, gives a lot of agility to the marketing team to run more personalized campaigns and do that very, very quickly. Now, let's say we have 75 banners, but you have one change that you want to make across all of them. If you are using legacy Adobe software, probably it'll take you a couple of days to 3 days to do it. In Rocketium, that process is pretty simple. So let me show you how that works. So I could come here and say bulk edit. And let's say I'm going ahead and editing these 3 variants. And in this case, what I want to change is the background color for all the different sizes across all the 3 variants that we've identified, right? So maybe I just want to make it white. This is updated. So if I come to these variants that I had selected across all the sizes, across all the different versions, this has been updated, right? Now, let's think of a way where not only do I want to change one element, but I just want to completely change the look and feel of this creative. Again, very quickly, let's say the CTA creatives I want to select, but in this case, instead of changing one part of it, I wanted to completely change the layout, change the CTA, because I have saved some pre-selected layouts. I could go here, update this so that across the variations I selected, this has been updated with the newer design guidelines, right? And all of this is pre-saved, so you don't have to actually move an inch, right? So very quickly being able to make banners at scale. And by the way, the same process applies to videos as well. So being able to make videos in multiple sizes, import from a spreadsheet, be able to make edits like we did for images, all of that is possible. So in a way, reduces a lot of repetitive, redundant work for the design team, also gives a lot of agility to the marketing team to go live with campaigns faster. So this was about how to create campaigns. Now, if you made those campaigns live in a Facebook or a JDN and you connect your account, you'd probably start getting in data like this, where at an image level, you'll be able to see what the different performance metrics are, right? And there are three types of data that we can collect. One is your performance data. We could also collect any sort of manual or you could manually annotate these creatives with certain with certain text so that you can analyze your strategies here. Also, there are various AI generated fields as well. So if you really wanted to see, is there a face on a creative, what what is the proportion of captions to text, proportion of captions to overall creative, how many persons are there. Any of these elements could be auto populated in case you wanted to analyze your creatives at that level, right? So let's say in this case, probably I just want to look at three value props that I use. So delivery, the store name where I was using like a Walmart or a Publix or a Sam's Club. There was delivery related messaging that I had done for this one. And then there was a specific discount that I had offered on these creatives, right? So now you could see what sort of creatives are working out well. And potentially you could also do visualization. You could set this up and then collate that into a nice looking dashboard so that you can see how your live campaigns are running and how visuals, what sort of visuals are working and how you want to optimize the budget across these campaigns, right? So broadly, this is how you would be able to now, experiment, generate a lot of creatives, identify the levers based on which you want to experiment, like we saw with Instacart, and then go ahead and understand what is happening and kind of optimize from there, right? But one thing based on my experience I can say is any of these frameworks, please take it with a pinch of salt. Depending on industry, depending on your audience segments, there is a tendency for this to significantly change. So the only way to find the answer is running methodical experiments and being able to take those learnings in optimizing this further, right? So that was a short overview of how we analyzed Instacart's creatives, plus how you could run such experiments on Rocketium, right? So we'll open this out to questions, and yeah, happy to stay back and answer my. All right, so Raki, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Karan, for walking us through the experimentation framework with Instacart's example. So let's get to a few questions. So the first one is, when creatives are made at scale, how do you ensure brand compliance with Rocketium?
Okay, so good question. So if you saw in Instacart's example, the first thing we did was set up a master creative, right? So when you set up a master creative or a template, as you may call it, be it an image, be it a video, you could actually set certain guidelines. So for example, you could say that, let's say I give a box to a CTA. If that buy now becomes add to cart, what should happen to the font size? Should it reduce? Should you give a character limit to it? what are allowable colors, because in Rocketium you could make sure that only your brand colors are visible and no other color could be used for a certain element, right? So you could actually set up all these rules in a template, so that once you feed in the information, whatever output you get, that is aesthetic. And again, it's not just dumb automation where it just goes and feeds provides the data to the design and a design gets populated. Every element has rules behind it, so that the output is aesthetic. Hope I answered that.
So we have the next one. How can we measure the results or impact of the specific elements being tested?
Oh, I see that in the chat as well. How can we measure the results or impact? So there are two types of testing. I think this is from Kunal. So Kunal, there are two types of testing that we generally see. One is an A/B test where you take two creatives and you try and see which is performing better. One is a multivariate test where you're taking each element separately and you're able to now look at how the creatives are performing for each of those elements, right? So let's take value prop as an example, like I took here. So I have my discount value prop. I have a specific coupon value prop, and now I'm going ahead and using those creators on a ad platform, and I'm getting data to tell me which across these two value props, which one is performing better. So for that value prop, everything else remaining the same, including the imagery, including the particular captions, etc. What are the differences in the performance? You are able to look at it, right? And with Rocketium, you are able to the system is able to identify which of these parameters highly correlate to performance, and we'll be able to give you insights based on that, right? So in that sense, Rocketium knows each layer of your creative, so we're able to correlate that with performance and say that, okay, what if you look at the experimentation framework, what part of your creative actually correlates highly to performance.
So I'll also add to that, you can also create custom dashboards. You can compare different elements, their performance, take the metric. So based on the objective of the goal of your campaign, you could look at different funnel stages and kind of look at the metric that's super critical at that stage, right? So you can do a lot of custom dashboards you can build. So Karan, the next one is, how is it different from the analytics platforms like Meta provide?
Okay. So broadly, if you think about the channels where you're advertising, be it Facebook, GDN, etc., they do provide analytics at the level of the creative, right? So it will tell you at a creative or an ad level what are the performance metrics. Here you can go one level deeper, because this creative is performing better, but you don't know why, right? So because like I mentioned in the previous answer, you can actually identify the at an elemental level what you're able to correlate with performance, and that's why somewhere when you're making your next campaign, where you want to over index, right? So we spoke about some of the experimentation levers. So should I run tests on color? Should I run tests on, let's say, just the format, right? So any of this is only possible when at an element level how your creatives are performing.
The next one, who are the typical users of such platforms? Is it marketing or the design team?
So typically, if you think of the example I showed, if you had to make the master creative, definitely that's the design team doing it, right? Either they could be doing it in Rocketium, they could also be making it in a design software like an Adobe and bringing it into Rocketium as well, right? So you could do it either way. As it relates to then scaling it, maybe the first time scaling is done by the designer. In some cases, it's directly once the master creative is ready, it's handed over to non-design team. So it could be the marketing team, it could be in some e-commerce use cases, it could be the merchandising team, because at the end of the day, a lot of this may not be design work, right? So let's say I'm changing the CTA from shop now to buy now, right? Not a lot of design effort is needed there, as long as the right rules are being set up so that your output is aesthetic, right? So both designers and marketers are users of the platform. On the design side, it's typically on the creative side, trying to come up with the concept, come up with the design. On the marketing side, it's just to be able to actually go live faster with campaigns, bulk edit at scale. A sale is going on, I want to change something quickly, I should be able to do that on my own.
So another one here. how can agencies use this?
So agencies, again, they are running different sort of campaigns for their eventual clients. So not very different from how brand teams would use it internally. You would have your media teams who are actually running the campaigns. You would have your internal design teams who are making the creatives for their campaign. So in a very similar way, design teams can actually come up with the concept after talking to the clients. They could then pass it on to the media teams to actually run the campaign, and then the media team, or in most agencies there is a analytics team as well, who's kind of looking at those the performance of those creatives. They can use the analytics portion of the platform as well.
And also just walk us through the collaboration, right? Like how Rocketium makes it easy for teams to collaborate, right?
So on the collaboration side, again, if you can think of the entire process, right from coming up with the concept to actually going ahead and executing that creative, looking at the performance and optimizing, there are many stakeholders involved and many decision points through the process, right? So potentially with Rocketium, you can bring that entire process inside, wherein the concept, sharing the concept can happen directly on Rocketium. So there is a Kanban like setup where you could raise a ticket, provide that information. You could then assign it to people. You can make sure that certain users are assigned to certain projects. Once the creative is made, any feedback loop that has to be set up, you could comment, share, any of those things could happen. And then once it goes live, whatever feedback you receive and you want to optimize, you could do that. So that entire process, instead of happening on emails, on let's say you're storing all of it on your local hard disk, all of that goes away. All of this happens in Rocketium itself.
So, Karan, that marks the end of the questions we had. Um, I think we're 5 minutes early.
So, all right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And yeah, if there are any questions, do feel free to email me. We'll share the deck and recording shortly. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.